Hey everyone, it's Desi Chang, and in this video I'm going to be comparing the Nikon ZF, the Fujifilm XT5, the Fujifilm X100VI, as well as the Leica Q2. Now these cameras are they all have that retro styling for photographic purposes. They're not, I mean, yes, they can do video, but they're not meant to be hybrid cameras. Yes, you can do video with them, but if you really truly want a hybrid camera, go for a Sony or Canon or Panasonic, because those cameras are going to be better, in my opinion, than these cameras. Now, in this video, I'm not going to dive through all of these specs and compare them because you can find that on B&H Photo website. What I am going to do is more talk about the ergonomics of it, how it feels in my hand, which one am I going to be gravitating to when I'm going traveling next or just going to the park with my kids and family. That's what this video is about. It's about which camera am I just going to be using more so on an everyday basis, not so much work. So the biggest camera here is going to be the Nikon ZF. With the battery grip and this 40mm special edition lens attached, it's going to be about $2,280 US, and it's the heaviest as well at 993 grams. Next up, the Fujifilm XT5 is with the 23mm f2 combo, retails for about $2,150 US, and it weighs about 748 grams. The smallest one of the group is the Fujifilm X100VI, and this retails for about $1,600 US, not including the case, and it is about 616 grams-ish in weight. Next up, we have the Leica Q2. On the used market, it's about $4,000 US. It's discontinued now, so if you want one, you're gonna have to buy a Leica Q3 brand new, and that one's gonna be, I don't know, like $6,000 or $7,000 US, so it's quite a bit more expensive. And this one is about 200 grams more heavier than the X100VI at 816 grams. And just for fun, I have the Sony ZV-E1 with a 28mm f2 combo. This combo retails for about $2,800 US, and it weighs in about 686 grams. So let's talk about the Nikon ZF first. It is the biggest one and heaviest one of the bunch, and honestly, I'd probably take this one out the least amount compared to all of these cameras on a personal function, just because it's so big and chunky and heavy. Now, some things I really don't like about it is this the placement of this strap. Whenever I'm kind of like, wanting to, hit the shutter button, I'm either putting my fingers in between this strap like that, or sometimes I'll go over, or sometimes I'll do in this like that. I don't know, like it just kind of gets in the way, and I'm not a huge fan. The other thing I really don't like about it is that it has it doesn't have a dedicated ISO dial or button or anything like that, or a scrolly wheel. The like all my Canons and Sonys, they have a dedicated one, so you have your shutter, aperture, and your ISO. But this one you have to press a button and then scroll. So it's fine, but it's just kind of annoying. The other thing I don't like about it is that the lens options. Now, when you're looking at the Nikon Z lenses, yes, they are good. They are sharp. But they are ugly and they're actually, compared to like a Sony version, they're quite a bit bigger. And also when you're even looking at, for example, the 50mm 1.8 Nikon versus the 50mm 1.8 Canon, it's significantly larger. I know that this is better quality, but I wish they had a more compact version of the 50mm. Just because, if I want to be more compact and running gunning, I'm not really going to be using this 1.8S. It's at this point, I might as well just use my Sony cameras. Another thing I really didn't like about it is, out of the box, the grip is absolutely terrible, and because this camera is so heavy and the grip is so small, I feel like this camera is gonna essentially drop out of my hand and break. So more of a safety or insurance thing is you really need to buy that small rig grip, which is absolutely stupid. I mean, I feel like they could have just made this camera just a little bit bigger and added a grip to it. It's not too expensive, about $40 US, but yeah, that's one kind of annoying thing about it is, like, yeah, if you buy this camera camera, you have to buy the grip. Otherwise, you're probably gonna drop your camera. But there are other great things about this camera, such as the retro design of it. I absolutely love it. I had the older Nikon DF and I love that, but you know, it was very, very archaic. But this one is much better. The autofocus is fantastic. It actually is pretty much almost up there, if not the same as compared to my Sony and my Canon cameras. So the autofocus is amazing. It's definitely the best out of like all these cameras on the table, except for the Sony. Sony is also pretty damn good as well. It also has a fully articulating screen, which is nice. And yeah, just the overall performance of this camera, I have no problem bringing this out to use as a work camera. But again, this is probably the camera that I take out the least, just because it's just so big and chunky. Next up, let's talk about the Fujifilm X-T5. Straight out of the box, it has a much more comfortable grip than the Nikon ZF. It's just, it just feels better. The weight, it's not too heavy. But I will have to say though, actually no, I would use this camera the absolute least. I'd probably use the Nikon ZF a little bit more than this one. But the reason why I don't really take this camera out anymore, and I probably will sell this, is just because for the same combo right here, I would actually just rather take the Fujifilm X100VI, just because the image quality is the same, and this is much more compact, and I feel like this one has a much more retro and sexy looking design. A couple other cool things about this, aside from having a tilty screen at the back, but it also has a portrait mode tilty screen, so you can actually tilt the screen vertically, which is something that I have not seen in any other camera. Actually, I think the Panasonic one does or something like that, but yeah, that's a cool feature. In terms of the most used camera out of all of these is the Fujifilm X100VI, and that's just literally the biggest theme for today is just size, how compact it is and how easy it is to take around, and the Fujifilm X100VI definitely wins. In terms of autofocus performance, it's much better than the X100V, the V, but it's definitely nowhere near compared to like the Sony or the Nikon right here. But I really just love this retro design. It just looks so sexy. Now I did wish that it did have a wider lens to it. I know you can get a lens adapter, but that's just one other thing I don't want to bring around with me, because I really like the focal length of the Leica Q2, which has a 28mm lens, which we'll talk about later on. But this thing, this camera has a nice little tilty screen, which is nice. It fits nice and comfortable in the hand. I did get this like half leather case from Amazon, and it feels great. I don't feel like I'm gonna drop this camera at all. In terms of the grip though, my pinky does go onto the bottom of the camera, which is unfortunate, but I mean, it's not like a deal breaker or anything like that. And here I have the Leica Q2. I use this camera second most compared to the Fujifilm I use the most, but I just really, really love the image quality. I would say that, between all of these cameras, yeah, I mean, they all look great, but there's just something about the images coming out of this Leica that just make it pop. And that's why I always kind of gravitate toward this camera. And I really love this lens combo. It's a 28mm f1.8. And the cool thing is it does have a macro function. So you just gotta turn this little dial right here and it will turn into a macro lens. The autofocus sucks though. Autofocus is absolutely terrible. It's the worst out of all of these ones. It's archaic, and the low light is terrible as well. So anything over like 6400 is garbage, or it's not garbage, but it's just, you can just really tell there's a lot of grain in it. So this is definitely not a like nighttime camera, but I just really like the simplistic, the simplicity of this camera. There's not too many buttons or dials on it. And yeah, I don't think I would sell this camera just because I just got a certain love for it. Maybe just because of the Leica red dot, I don't know. But between this one and the Fujifilm, I mean, these two are my kind of go-tos. So let's wrap this video up. Which camera am I gonna be taking out on my next kind of personal adventure? It's most likely gonna be the Fujifilm X100VI, just because of its compact design. At times, depending on what I'm doing, I will also take the, or not also, but I will take instead the Leica Q2 just because the image quality is amazing. And if I need something a little bit wider, because this one is 28 millimeters as opposed to equivalent of 35 millimeters, this is going to give me a wider field of view. But actually, if you've read online, this 28 is actually closer to a 24, 25 mil-ish as opposed to 28 mil. Yeah, but I mean, if you are also looking for a great kind of hybrid of a work / personal camera, the Nikon ZF is a fantastic choice just because the internals of it, the autofocus performance of it is absolutely amazing. It's super fast, and I could rely on this for any professional shoot, no problem. Which leads me to kind of the XT5. I'm probably going to sell the XT5 just because I don't really have a use for it. If I really need to use like a camera with interchangeable lenses, I'm probably going to be choosing my Sony. Oh, and then just lastly, just for fun, this camera, this ZV-E1, which is kind of like the A7C II, if you don't care about the retro design and taking photos only, and you just want an overall best performer, I think the Sony A7C II, which is not this one, but similar to it, is going to be the best bang for the buck because it's a great hybrid camera, amazing video, amazing photos, the best autofocus, and it's super compact, lightweight, small lenses. It's just going to be the best, I think. Anyways, so I hope you've enjoyed this video. So please like and subscribe, and definitely don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Desi31.